Being a local to New Jersey, I've heard all sorts of crazy stories you probably wouldn't believe about the Jersey Devil. But until you've had your own actual experience, and you could see this demon in front of you for the first time, those stories are just that. Stories. And while I've spent many of my years in my youth camping, gallivanting, and partying in the Pine Barrens, I never thought I would be the one select few to have my own face-to-face encounter with this demon-like creature. I'm 36 now, so this happened quite a while back, while I was in my early 20s. Still kind of in and out of that party phase. Still going through a rough growing up period, if you know what I mean. Hanging around with the wrong crowd, substance abuse, among other toxic behaviors. I often spent many nights alone, as much as I could, in the Pine Barrens. Not because I specifically had a love for the Pine Barrens. It was just, I love the woods. And those were really the closest that there were around me. So I tried to learn as much as I could. Spend as much time as I could. And ultimately, for years, all my experiences and encounters in the woods were very normal. In fact, the only encounters I ever had were small critters that would normally be residents to the woods anyway. But when you grow up in this area, you'll come across all sorts of stories from locals and friends and family alike. Things about Bigfoot, strange lights, strange noises, aliens, UFOs, all sorts of hoopla coming from the Pine Barrens. I've even heard countless stories of occult rituals and satanic worship and sacrifice happening within the Pine Barrens. But that's all they were to me at the time. Just stories. I had never seen any of this stuff with my own eyes. But I would eventually get my chance. So this one night, I'm camping out by myself. It was just me, a small single-person tent. I didn't go too far into the woods, like miles and miles, like most people. I was more towards the edge of the woods, maybe a half-mile in, if I wanted to get out. But that was my usual. On nights that I wasn't partying, or going completely crazy, or spending it with a very toxic girlfriend at the time, I would just try and go and be at peace with myself, meditate out in the woods. And believe it or not, I found sleeping in a sleeping bag out in a small tent in the middle of the woods much more relaxing and comfortable than sleeping at my ratty apartment at the time, which I shared with two very volatile roommates. My normal night routine is I would have my fire, sit by the fire, relax, read a good book, and eventually turn into bed in the tent, probably still reading my book until it was time to close my eyes, usually with a flashlight, of course. And sometimes, this night included, I remember this, I would sometimes forget to go pee before I went to bed, and so I hated getting up out of my sleeping bag, so I always tried to make it a priority to go and take a leak before I lay down. But this night, I forgot, and I almost wonder, had I not forgotten, maybe I wouldn't have had this encounter, but I don't know. So I go to lay down, I got my book, and I'm reading, and I feel the urge to go. Flustered that I had forgotten to go before I laid down, because I hate getting uncomfortable once I've already gotten into a very comfortable position. I pull myself up, grab my flashlight, and maybe wander about 15-20 feet away from my camp. I undo my pants, and I'm there doing my business. Now, while this is going on, I hear this strange whooshing, fluttering noise off to my left, up in a tree. It sounded awfully loud to just be a bat or some sort of owl. Like, if it had come from an owl, the owl would have needed to be considerable size to make this amount of noise. So, out of reaction, I turned my flashlight up towards the tree where I'd heard the noise. And that's when my urine stream stopped mid-flow. I was terrified. I'm not just adding in that detail to be funny. I mean, what I saw, it was the embodiment of all nightmares combined. Sitting, perched up in this tree, on this fat branch, maybe no higher than 20 feet up in the air, was this demonic gargoyle-looking being with orange glowing yellow eyes. And it had this very elongated face, which is what they find common with the Jersey Devil. Now, it didn't look like a horse, but it had almost a horse-like face, where its face is kind of pulled out and elongated. It had these tall bat-like ears on the side of its head that shot straight up and were pointed, and it had these nasty wings that were kind of coiled around it. And as soon as I shined my flashlight on it, it's like I was looking something straight out of a horror Hollywood movie. It certainly reacted to the light shining in its face, kind of grimacing, but sort of squinting its eyes at the same time. It then quickly coiled its wings around its body and then shot up in the air and completely disappeared. As soon as my light hit it, and I saw this thing for what it was, I just remember muttering out loud, "What the F are you?" And within a second, this thing coils its wings and is gone. And I knew I wasn't just seeing things, because as this thing shot up out of the tree, the weight of it being on the branch, as soon as it took off, the branch lifted up, as if something being heavy on it was now taken off. I quickly run back to my tent, dive in, zip the tent up, jump into my sleeping bag, and I zip that thing up all the way to where my whole body is covered inside. I was terrified. I didn't have any weapons on me. Stupid me, I know. But now my new game plan was to just wait until the sun came up, and then I would be safe to leave, because I had no idea if that thing was still out there. When this happened to me, I wasn't thinking, oh my gosh, I just saw the Jersey Devil. My mind was in such disarray and trying to process what I had just looked at. I wasn't sure if I had saw a demon or a gargoyle or what it was that I saw. But I can tell you that I had never felt pure terror like that. It was like a wave that hit my entire body all at once, and I've never felt frozen in fear, truly, until a moment like that. And the rest of that night is kind of a blur, because I think I was so terrified. I don't even recall if I slept at all. I just remember at one point, popping my head out, and the sun was just barely rising. Just enough light, the same as there would be in dusk. So I quickly gathered my stuff up, didn't even waste too much time, and went back to my apartment at the time. For about the next couple weeks, I was too afraid to go back to the forest. Not just the pine barrens, but really any woods, to be honest. Until maybe about a month later in total, I told a family member who I had trusted and told stories to before. Not encounters with things like this, but about abusive situations before in my past. Somebody I felt safe opening up to. They told me that it sounds like I had my very own run-in with the Jersey Devil. They went on to share with me their own personal encounter about how they were driving home late one night, and they saw a similar creature, as I described, swoop down and nearly shatter their windshield. But you can tell why that they kept that encounter to themselves, for fear of mocking and disbelief. But I'll always remember that moment, because just like I was being vulnerable and opening up to them, they were being vulnerable and opening up to me, expressing the same encounter with the same creature. And after thinking for a moment, I realized, oh my gosh, I had my very own run-in with this thing. The Jersey Devil is real. Which really makes it more terrifying, because if that's the case, that means Sasquatch, and I'm sure all the other things that happen in the Pine Barrens probably really do go on, assuming that it is what I saw. My encounter happened a while back, 2013, and I can remember it like it was yesterday. I was traveling northbound along the John Davison Rockefeller Memorial Highway, commonly known as Highway 70, heading up to Lakehurst in Jersey. It was evening time, just about dusk, but there was still light outside, but dark enough that everybody should have had their headlights on. There was a fair amount of traffic on the road, a few cars in front of me, and several oncoming cars every little bit. I couldn't tell you the exact part on the road I was on, but I'm driving, and I see an oncoming vehicle stop and kind of swerve out of the way. Then, I see what I'll describe as this black shape kind of bounce in front of the vehicle right in front of me, causing them almost to stop and swerve. Then, jump up again and jump right in front of my vehicle, maybe no more than 30 feet, causing me to slam on my brakes and nearly swerve off the road. Then, this shape, or thing, jumps up in the air and vanishes. I'm astonished that, between me and the two other drivers that, whatever the shape was, jumped in front of. It didn't cause any of us to have any accidents. We were all far enough away that halting on our brakes wouldn't have caused any traffic collisions, but still, as soon as I saw the oncoming car halt on its brakes and swerve, my first thought was a deer had just ran out into the front of the road. But then I saw the black shape move, all within a second, and so I'm trying to think, what was that, when I see the car in front of me halt on their brakes and swerve. And then the shape jumps in front of my car, and just for about a second, I caught a glimpse of what looked like a strange winged bat. It's almost like it flew down, crouched down on the road, and then jumped back up and soared into the air. I only got maybe a second or two to look at it, and it happened all so fast that the only way I can describe it to you is it was kind of half man, half bat. Which, trust me, I know that sounds so awfully silly, but its body proportions were really that of a man than anything else. The face was longer, but it looked exactly like what you'd see out of a bat. Very ugly, very long, and very strange looking, like it didn't belong in this natural world. In that very moment, I was more frightened that I was going to hit it or cause a traffic collision than anything else. Once the thing jumped up, or should I say bounced up and disappeared, the car in front of me and the oncoming vehicle were already back up to speed and straightened out on the road, as I was regaining speed myself. Nobody was behind me, so, again, I didn't have to worry about causing an accident like I initially thought. But still, what kind of animal could this have been? I did think about it, but it didn't cause me to lose any sleep. But it's definitely a weird experience that I've gone through, and it has stuck with me. I mean, how could you forget something like this? Having only lived in this area since 2006, I've heard all sorts of stories about a Batman, Mothman, and other strange creatures, folklore, I should say, that are supposed to inhabit the island and the areas around here, all the way up from Virginia, even up to Maine. But I never paid them much attention. Is it possible that I saw something out of legend, or was this simply just a very large bat that I mistook the identity for? And before I end this email, I just wanted to say that I can't over-exaggerate the size. It was clearly large enough that when it first flew in front of my car, and I saw the bat features, I thought it honestly was maybe a man, just due to the size alone, and the fact that a large bat, even when the size of an owl, is not going to cause two cars in front of me to halt and swerve on the road from nearly hitting it. So, again, I don't know what I saw. First, I would just like to state that I firmly believe I've had my own encounter with what you and many would consider to be known as the Jersey Devil. But what I know about it seems to be vastly different than what most people know about it. For example, here's what I know. That the Jersey Devil is actually said to roam the open plains of New Jersey, and supposedly lives in a swamp. But people have been warning us for years not to go into the open waters of Jersey and keep your distance. According to even urban legend, the Jersey Devil was once roaming the pinelands as a wild dog. Not sure how much truth there is to that. Some say that he's the real protector of the Pine Barrens, guarding against all kinds of evil, even though he himself is evil. Several have also told stories about encounters with the Jersey Devil in the swamps of the Pine Barrens specifically, according to the commissions. There is an even old book about the legends of the Monmouth Pinelands. One account read kind of like a fairy tale. Basically, a lady lived in a lonely cottage in the Pine Barrens at the time. One night, she tried to sleep on her front porch, but instead fell asleep in the water. She was dreaming of a monster in white skin, which woke her in the night. When she woke the next morning, the woman discovered that the Pine Barrens were once full of tall palm trees. Again, I don't know how much truth there is to that. It's just what I've heard. I'm hoping that the legend of this hideous Jersey Devil is probably just a legend. Although after seeing it, what I believe to be myself, there might be some truth. No one is sure exactly where the story of this wild, wandering devil came from, and I know there are many accounts of this being seen in the Pine Barrens, but there are also seeming to be tales in the Atlantic Ocean. It seems that most sightings occur around Halloween, where the devil himself is known to take human form and wander through the streets. One of the Jersey Devil's favorite spots, of course being the Pine Barrens, as well as the Catskills in the Connecticut River Valley. Many people believe that there's even a connection between the infamous Connecticut River Valley killer and the Jersey Devil possessing the individual. Many people also believe that this thing comes out at night to scare and attack people. But one of the more popular legends about the Jersey Devil is that he himself lives in a large wooded area in West Hempstead, New Jersey, and that even the locals around here say you could see him there at night, but not all the time. Others say that he resides near a very large house with a very gate in the center of it. There are many other alleged sightings all over the country, mostly in southern parts of New Jersey. Actually, one of the most famous alleged sightings took place in Arizona, where a very well-known TV show host claimed that he saw a creature resembling the Jersey Devil come out of the water, and he captured it on tape. There are other strange sightings all over the world, including on Rhode Island, Texas, California, Maryland, Colorado, Illinois, and even Florida. There are even stories about a Jersey Devil that was supposedly sighted in Louisiana by a man who had taken a photograph of it, but it's kind of all hearsay. So, I'm not exactly sure what I saw after knowing the details of what I just told you. From what I know, the Jersey Devil is said to have long bat-like wings, big ears, and a short tail. Basically the same creature I've seen multiple times. They also say he has big red eyes and a hooked tail. I never saw any eyes or a hooked tail, but very interesting. Some have also claimed he has 4 wings, 2 broad and 2 long, and the wings almost kind of seem twisted. Many people say that the wings are also very wide, like a bat's. No one is exactly sure what this elusive and legendary creature is, or where it came from, but many claim it to be true, me included.